I want to start somewhere that genuinely unsettles me, so stay with me here. There is a kind of stuff, real stuff, not a thought experiment, not a figure of speech, that if it's so much as brushed against ordinary matter, against your hand, against this table, the two of them wouldn't crack, wouldn't shatter, wouldn't burn. They would vanish, both of them gone, the entire substance of them in a single flash of pure light. Not damaged, not broken into pieces you could sweep up afterwards, simply no longer there.
That's it, exactly as you said it. And most people, hearing that, picture some monstrous thing sealed in a vault at the far end of the world, kept behind thick glass and warning lights, guarded by nervous people in suits. So let me spoil the comfort of that straight away. It is not only somewhere far off, locked away from decent folk. A little of that stuff is being made much, much closer to home than any vault. Right now, as you sit there breathing.
Closer to home meaning what? The room I am in? The building?
Closer than the room. Closer than your own coat. Inside you. Your own body, this very second, is quietly manufacturing tiny flecks of it. The substance that makes matter disappear. And it has been doing so every moment of your life.
Hang on, inside my body. You are telling me that I am, personally, a factory for the one substance in the universe that makes matter cease to exist. That is a sentence I did not expect to hear about myself today.
In unimaginably small amounts, but yes. Honestly, truly, inside you, right now. The stuff has a name, antimatter, and it is matter's mirror twin. For the ordinary matter you are built from, there is a mirror version of it, identical in nearly every way, the same mass, the same heft, built to the very same blueprint, but carrying the opposite charge. And the one iron rule between them is that they cannot share a room. Matter and its mirror on contact, gone. The pair of them wholly into light.
Okay, but I am sitting here in one piece, visibly unvanished, which means either you are pulling my leg for sport, or there is an enormous but coming that you are enjoying holding back.
There is an enormous but, and it is the kindest word in the whole story. Yes, your body makes the mirror stuff. No, you are not a bomb. The amount is so staggeringly, laughably tiny. A stray fleck here, another stray fleck there, that each one meets an ordinary particle almost the very instant it is born, winks out in a flash far too faint to feel, and is gone before it could ever gather into anything. You have been doing it your whole life. You will do it tonight in your sleep. It has never once harmed you, and it never will.
So what you are telling me, in plain words, is that I am, slightly, a bomb.
You are, at the absolute most, the softest, most harmless firework that has ever gone off, spread so thin across so long a life that you could never gather it into so much as a spark. Hold on to the wonder. Let go of the fear. There is no fear here. There is only something genuinely marvelous, hiding in plain sight, inside the most ordinary thing you own, which is your own warm body.
And this is not rare in some grand cosmic sense. The world just quietly makes a trickle of the stuff, everywhere, all the time, and I never noticed.
A steady trickle, ceaselessly, everywhere. High in the air where things rain down out of space, deep in the ground, in the faint restlessness of perfectly ordinary matter, and yes, in the warm dark of your own body. And every single fleck of it is snuffed out almost the moment it appears, because it is surrounded, always, on every side, by an ocean of ordinary matter that is only ever too happy to cancel it. The mirror stuff never gets to pile up. It is born into a world that erases it on the spot, which, if you sit with it, is the whole strange question of this hour in miniature. Why is the world made of the one and not the other?
And that is precisely the thing you have just strolled straight past, so I am going to plant my feet on it. If every scrap of ordinary matter has a mirror twin, and the two of them destroy each other on sight, then why is there anything here at all? Why am I made of matter and not the mirror kind? Why isn't the whole universe just light that already happened ages ago and finished?
And there it is. On the very first breath, you have gone and asked it. That is one of the genuinely unanswered questions in all of physics. And I mean unanswered tonight, by anyone alive, in any language. So hold on to it. Do not let me wriggle out of it later, however smooth I get. Because we are going to walk right up to that question by the end of the hour, and when we arrive, I am going to have to look you in the eye and tell you the honest thing.
Which is what? Give me at least the shape of it now.
The shape is, nobody knows. Truly nobody. But not yet. If I hand you the whole mystery now, before I have earned it, it is just a spooky noise in the dark, and you will shrug it off by breakfast. Let me build the thing properly first, piece by piece, until it is solid enough to stand on, and then that question will land on you with its full weight. And it is heavy. It is one of the heaviest things I know how to carry.
All right, then build it, brick by brick, and I will be patient. Start here. Where does a mirror version of matter even come from? Who on earth ordered it?
Nobody ordered it. That is the first beautiful thing about it. Nobody wanted it, nobody went looking for it, nobody had the faintest reason to expect it, and it arrived anyway. Not through a telescope, not out of some lucky accident on a workbench. It arrived out of a piece of mathematics. The sums themselves insisted the mirror stuff had to be real, years before a single scrap of it was ever seen by any eye.
Hold on, you are saying antimatter was predicted? Not stumbled onto, not caught by luck, not seen and then puzzled over, but worked out in advance on paper, before anyone laid eyes on the thing itself.
Worked out in advance, on paper, before anyone had seen so much as a trace of it, by a man named Dirac. And this is, to my mind, one of the strangest and most wonderful things that has ever happened in the whole history of science. So let me take it slowly, because it genuinely deserves slow.
Take all the time you like. What was he actually trying to do? Because predict an entire new kind of matter using algebra is not what I picture anyone doing on an ordinary Tuesday.
He was trying to make two great ideas shake hands. Picture two rulebooks that had grown up side by side and mostly ignored one another. One was the quantum, the rulebook of the very small, of electrons and their strange, blurry, only ever probable lives. The other was relativity, the rulebook of the very fast, of things moving near the speed of light, where space and time themselves start to bend. Both were triumphant, both were trusted absolutely, and they simply would not talk to each other.
And the electron is a problem child because it lives in both worlds at once. It is tiny, so it needs the quantum, but it can also move fast, so it needs relativity.
That is precisely the trouble. The electron lives in both kingdoms and pays taxes to both crowns. So any honest description of it had to obey both rulebooks at the very same time. The quantum and relativity welded into a single law, with neither one granted an inch of exception. And nobody had managed it cleanly. It kept coming out wrong. Dirac set out to write down one equation for the electron that answered to both masters at once, without cheating either.
And why was that so hard? Two good rulebooks, both of them working. Why not just staple them together and call it an evening?
Because when you first tried to force them together, the maths misbehaved. It spat out nonsense, answers that could not mean anything, likelihoods that came out the wrong way round, quantities that refused to make sense. For a while it honestly looked as though the small world and the fast world simply could not be written down by the same pen at the same time. That was the wall Dirac walked up to, and instead of battering it down, he did something quieter and far stranger. He asked what the equation would have to look like, its very shape, its grammar, its bones, for the nonsense never to arise in the first place. He reasoned backwards from the answer must come out sensible to the one and only form that could deliver it.
So he didn't guess forwards and hope, he worked out what shape the truth was allowed to be.
Exactly that. And the equation he arrived at was gorgeous, spare and inevitable, and it worked. It described the electron beautifully, better than anything before it. But it also did something nobody had asked it to do, something he could not switch off, however he tried. Where he had expected one answer, one electron, the mathematics calmly, insistently handed him two.
Two. Two what, though? Two electrons? Two copies of the same thing.
Not quite. It described the ordinary electron perfectly, and then, sitting right there beside it in the very same equation, refusing to be shooed away, it described a second thing. Same mass as the electron, down to the last hair, but the opposite charge. Where the electron is negative, this second solution was positive. The maths had coughed up a mirror electron, entirely uninvited, and it would not leave the room.
Okay, but surely his first thought was that he had simply made a mistake. That is what I would think. An extra answer falls out of the bottom of my sums. I assume I dropped a minus sign somewhere 3 pages back. I cross it out, and I get on with my life like a sane person.
And that is exactly what almost anyone would have done. That is the sane response, the sensible one, the one that lets you sleep. An inconvenient extra answer that seems to describe a particle nobody has ever seen. Bin it. Call it a wrinkle, a ghost in the algebra, a bookkeeping smudge, and move on to the real physics. Dirac did not bin it. He looked at that second solution, the one common sense was shouting at him to throw away, and he trusted it. He trusted the equation more than he trusted his own common sense. Imagine for a moment having that kind of nerve.
So the universe has to obey his homework. He does some algebra, an extra creature falls off the edge of the page, and his response is not, oops, my error, but, well then, it must be real, go and find it.
When you put it that way, it sounds like magnificent cheek, and at the time, to a great many very serious people, it did sound like cheek. But here is the thing that turns it from arrogance into something closer to faith. That equation was not Dirac's opinion. It was not a preference. It was the only way anyone had found to make the two rulebooks agree. The quantum and relativity, both fully satisfied, at once, with no fudging. And that single, forced, non-negotiable equation simply had a spare room built into it. A second solution, standing there. And Dirac's radical thought was quietly this: if the maths that gets everything else exactly right also insists on this, then something must live in that room. A mirror electron. It has to exist, so go and look.
And they looked.
And they found it. Exactly, precisely, as foretold. A particle with the same mass as the electron and the opposite positive charge. We call it the positron, the anti-electron, the electron's mirror twin, demanded by a line of mathematics before anybody had seen even a hint of it, and then found sitting there in the real world, just as the equation had promised it would be.
And when he first said it out loud, there is a mirror electron, go and find it. Did people believe him? Straight away? Or did they think he had lost the plot?
Not straight away, and certainly not everyone. It sounded outlandish, a whole new particle, conjured out of symbols, demanded by nothing but the stubbornness of an equation. Some of the very finest minds of the age were deeply uneasy about it. There were other, more cautious ways of reading that second solution that people reached for first, desperate to explain it away as something already familiar, something safe. None of those escapes held up. The second solution really was a genuinely new particle, exactly as heavy as the electron, exactly opposite in charge. And when it finally turned up in the world, seen and measured and utterly undeniable, the discomfort curdled into something closer to awe. Because it meant the mathematics had known. Before anyone thought to look, the equation already held the answer inside it.
I want to sit in that for a second because I think it is easy to nod at and miss entirely. He did not find a new particle by hunting for it in the wild. He found it by doing sums, by taking an equation seriously enough to believe it about a thing he could not see and had no other reason to think was there.
That is the whole miracle of it, and it is worth being properly, unashamedly amazed by. This was not the usual order of science, where you see a strange thing first and then scramble afterwards to explain it. This was the reverse, and the reverse is rare and thrilling. The explanation came first. The mathematics demanded the thing into existence, on paper, and then, obediently, the world produced it. A prediction out of pure thought, cashed in by reality. It is one of the most stunning acts of faith in an equation that anyone has ever been rewarded for.
So that is one mirror particle, the electrons. The positron, is that where it stops? One lonely twin for one particular kind of thing?
Not remotely. And this is the moment it stops being a curiosity about the electron and becomes a law about everything. Because it was never only the electron. What Dirac had cracked open was not a fact but a rule, a universal one. Every particle, every single kind there is, has an antiparticle. The same mass, the opposite charge, and opposite too in whatever other charges it happens to carry. Not a special quirk of one lightweight particle, a feature of the entire world, top to bottom.
Everyone, not just the electron, the proton as well, the things I am actually built out of.
The proton has its antiproton. Same mass, opposite charge. Deep down inside, the quark has its antiquark. Whatever bit of matter you can name, there is a mirror version of it waiting somewhere in the deck of cards. Matter comes doubled. All the way down, twin and anti-twin, top to bottom, no exceptions worth speaking of yet.
Okay, hang on. Let me cash something in from last time, because you left me with a promise dangling and I have not forgotten it. You told me I am built out of quarks and electrons. The proton being 3 quarks, the electron standing proudly on its own as a true partless thing. Are you now telling me that every one of those, every last brick I am made of, has a shadow version of itself?
Every one. There is, in principle, a complete shadow cast of you, an anti-you, particle for particle, an anti-proton wherever you have a proton, a positron wherever you have an electron, assembled in the very same arrangement, standing in the very same shape. A person-shaped piece of antimatter that would look identical to you in a mirror. And that would annihilate the real you and be annihilated in turn, wholly and instantly, the moment the two of you reached out to shake hands.
And that is not just a poetic figure of speech, is it? You could, in principle, actually build the mirror stuff up into something. Not just stray, lonely particles, but a whole mirror atom.
In principle, and in the tiniest, hardest won practice, yes. Take a mirror proton, coax a mirror electron into orbit around it, and you have built the mirror of the simplest atom there is. A genuine flake of antimatter, assembled to the same design as ordinary matter, obeying the same rules, shining in the same way, and utterly unable to touch anything ordinary without both sides vanishing on the spot. It is made only a handful of atoms at a time, at fabulous cost, held in a trap woven out of nothing but fields, so it never once brushes a wall, and even then it lasts barely an eye blink. But it is real. The mirror world is not a metaphor. You can, at staggering expense, cradle a speck of it in the palm of a magnetic field.
That is a horrifying and beautiful thing to picture, and I am choosing to move past the horrifying part quickly. So, everything has a twin. Is there anything at all that breaks the pattern? Anything that refuses to play along?
There is one lovely wrinkle, and it is worth the small detour. A few particles are their own mirror. They do not have a separate anti-twin waiting elsewhere in the deck. They are already in themselves their own. And the headline example is the one you know best of all, the one you are swimming in this very moment. The photon, the particle of light itself. There is no separate anti-photon out there anywhere. Light is its own anti-particle.
Wait, its own? How does a thing get to be its own mirror twin? That sounds like a contradiction wearing a bow tie.
Think about what the mirror actually does. Mostly it flips the charge, negative to positive, plus to minus, and so on down the line. But the photon carries no electric charge to begin with. There is nothing there to flip. So its mirror image comes out looking exactly like the original. The same thing, with nothing whatsoever to tell them apart. And when the mirror hands you back precisely what you started with, the particle simply is its own twin. Light needs no evil double lurking somewhere. It already is its own reflection, staring back.
I genuinely love that. Everything in the universe has a lurking mirror opposite that would destroy it on sight, and light just glances in the mirror, sees itself, and carries on perfectly content, entirely at peace.
It does, and tuck that away carefully, because light being its own twin is not a throwaway charm. It will come back and matter later when we ask where all the light in the sky actually came from. For now, just hold the picture whole. Matter comes doubled, twin and anti-twin, all the way down. And a rare, serene few, light among them, are already both at once, needing no opposite anywhere.
All right, but you keep using this one word, and I have been letting you get away with it turn after turn, and I am going to stop you now. Annihilate. You keep saying matter and its mirror, annihilate. I want to know what that actually means, physically, in the room. Because in my head, it is two things smashing into each other and blowing apart into a shower of debris. And I have a strong, sinking feeling you are about to tell me I have got it completely wrong.
You have got it completely wrong, and I am delighted because getting this one right is the beating heart of the whole hour. When people hear the word annihilate, they picture a collision. Two cars meeting head-on at speed. Glass and metal flying everywhere. Shrapnel, fragments, little pieces skittering off into the corners of the room to be swept up later. That is not this. That is not it at all, not even close.
So it is not a smash, not an explosion in the ordinary sense.
It is not a smash. Nothing shatters, nothing breaks into smaller bits. There are no fragments, no debris, no little shards to gather up afterwards, because there are no pieces to be had. It is not a collision, it is a cancellation, a complete unmaking. The two of them, the particle and its mirror, meet, and the entire substance of both simply ceases, all at once, to be matter, and streams away, every last scrap of it, as light.
Cancellation like +1 and -1, like they add up to nothing and leave the page blank.
Better than you know, and in more ways than one. Their charges are opposite, so on that one count, yes, a positive and its negative, summing exactly to nothing, the ledger blanked. But it goes far deeper than charge. It is not only that their charges cancel and leave zero, it is that the whole of what they are, every ounce of their mass, their entire standing as matter, converts completely into light. Nothing is left over as stuff, no ash, no smoke, no stubborn little core that survives the reckoning. Where two solid things were, there is a flash, and then there is only the light flying away.
But the stuff of them, the mass, the actual matter that was there, where does it go? It cannot just stop being. That breaks something in me.
It does not stop. It changes coat. And here is where an old friend walks back into the room. the one Einstein handed us. Mass is not some inert, dead lump of weight. Mass is a hoard of sleeping energy. A tiny pinch of matter, you will remember, secretly holds an enormous store of energy, wound up tight and sitting perfectly, silently still, worth far more than it ever lets on.
Right, the thing where even a crumb of stuff, doing nothing, sitting cold on a table, is secretly loaded with a genuine fortune of energy, just for existing at all.
That is the one exactly. Now, annihilation is that very idea, run all the way to its end. Every ordinary happening in the world only ever cracks the safe open a sliver. A fire, a battery, even a star, a sliver, no more. But when a particle meets its mirror, the safe does not open a sliver. It swings open completely. Every last bit of that sleeping energy, the whole hoard, in both of them, held back nothing, is released at once, as light. Nothing kept asleep, nothing skimmed. The entire fortune spent in a single instant.
So, and I am going right back to a joke you and I have run before, because I cannot help myself. The books balance.
The books balance to the very last farthing, and that is the delicious part. You could tally the whole store of energy locked inside the two of them beforehand, and then measure every scrap of light that comes flying out afterward, and the two sums land dead level. The whole substance becomes light. Nothing skimmed off the top, nothing tucked away in a back pocket for later, nothing lost down the side of the sofa. It is the most honest transaction in all of nature. Everything in, everything out, the ledger closed to the penny. No remainder anywhere.
And that really is different from the sun, because you told me once the sun runs on turning a bit of its own mass into light, and at the time I thought that was already the most extreme thing energy could possibly do.
The sun is a piker next to this. The sun, blazing at its ferocious best, only ever shaves the very thinnest sliver off the top of its ingredients. A whisper of their mass, cashed in, the whole rest left untouched and unbothered. A bonfire does even less. It barely dents the fuel it eats. Annihilation spends the entire thing. Not a sliver off the top. The whole of it, both particles, top to bottom, converted with no remainder at all. It is the purest, most complete conversion of matter into energy there is anywhere. There is no more complete transaction in the universe.
Let me test the no shrapnel claim, though, because it is the exact part my brain keeps rejecting. If I take two ordinary rocks and slam them together as hard as I physically can, I get dust, chips, heat, noise, bits flung everywhere. You are telling me matter meeting mirror gives me none of that, no bits at all, nothing on the floor?
None. Not a chip, not a grain, not a wisp of smoke. And the difference between the two is the whole point, so let me draw it good and sharp. When two rocks collide, they only rearrange. It is the same matter throughout, shoved into new shapes, with some of its motion turned into heat and sound. The stuff is all still there when the dust settles. You could weigh it and find every gram accounted for. When matter meets its mirror, the matter is not rearranged. It is spent. It stops being matter at all. Weigh the flash of light that flies out, and it carries the full worth of both of them. But there is no it left over. No object. No remains. One is a car crash. The other is an accounting entry, closing quietly to zero.
All right, that is one direction. Matter into light, totally, completely, nothing left behind. Now, and I have a horrible, thrilling feeling I already know where you are steering this. Can it run the other way?
Now you are thinking the way the equation thinks. Of course it runs the other way. An equals sign is honest in both directions, or it is not an equals sign at all. So run it backwards. Take a small patch of empty space and pour energy into it. Pure energy, light, motion, heat, crammed into a tiny volume. And if you pour in enough, matter freezes out of it.
Freezes out of it? Out of pure energy, actual matter that was not there a heartbeat before.
Genuinely new matter, not chips knocked off some older hidden block. Created on the spot, out of nothing whatsoever but energy. The way frost sets on a cold window pane out of invisible air. Except what is condensing here is not water, it is matter itself. Existence setting out of raw energy, like frost blooming across the glass on a winter morning.
And let me guess, because I'm starting to learn how you think, it does not come out alone.
It never comes out alone. That is the rule, and it is a beautiful one. When matter freezes out of energy, it is always born as a pair. A particle and its anti-twin together in the very same breath. Never one without the other, not for an instant. You cannot conjure a lone electron out of energy. You get an electron and a positron, twin and mirror, hand in hand, or you get precisely nothing.
Why though? Why can it not just make one? Why the strict insistence on the balanced pair every time?
Because the books have to balance here as well. The same bookkeeping, simply running the other way. Pure energy carries no charge on it. So whatever comes out of it cannot carry any charge either, not on the whole. And the only way to make matter out of chargeless energy and still be left with nothing on the charge ledger is to make a plus and a minus together. A particle and its exact opposite. Born balanced, so the sum stays nothing, always. Nature will not let you cheat that ledger, not even for the length of a heartbeat.
So let me connect this all the way back because it is ringing a very loud bell from the first episode. You told me, right at the start of all this, that there was a whole zoo of particles, well over 100 of them, far more than anyone wanted or asked for.
And now you know where a great many of them came from. That whole zoo, the bewildering, overstuffed crowd we met at the very beginning, an enormous number of its members were conjured into being exactly this way. Energy poured into a small space, freezing out into matter and mirror. Energy into stuff, stuff melting back into energy. Both directions, running constantly, genuinely happening, not as a story but as a fact. That two-way trade is not some curiosity out at the fringe of physics. It is the deep engine underneath the entire particle world. The busy counter where matter and energy are swapped back and forth without a second thought.
So when you say the zoo was populated this way, you mean the early universe was, running this counter at full tilt, making and unmaking matter without pause?
At a fury we can barely bring ourselves to imagine. Early on, when everything everywhere was hot enough, that counter never rested for a moment. Energy freezing into pairs of matter and mirror, those pairs meeting and melting straight back into energy, over and over, a roaring two-way traffic with no still instant anywhere in it. Make, unmake, make again. The particles were not so much permanent residents of the world as ripples that kept forming and flattening on the surface of a vast sea of energy. And every kind of particle that could possibly be made that way was made, which is exactly why there turned out to be a whole zoo of them, and not merely the handful we happen to be built from. Pour in enough energy, and the world hands you back everything it is capable of being.
And this rule, the balanced pair rule, matter and mirror always born together, always in perfectly equal amounts, I can hear it in your voice. This one is going to come back and matter enormously by the end.
Keep your ear right on it. Hold it exactly where it is, and do not put it down. That rule, energy makes matter and mirror in perfectly balanced pairs, always equal, never one without the other, is going to be the hinge the whole ending swings on. But not yet. First, I owe you something solid to stand on, because so far this has all sounded like a fever dream, and I want you to know, in your bones, that it is real.
You read my mind, honestly, because all of this still sounds like science fiction to me. Mirror matter, stuff freezing out of raw light, total annihilation with no remains. Is any of this actually real and handled and known? Or is it all chalkboard and confident hand-waving?
It is real, genuinely made, genuinely handled, genuinely catalogued. Sitting there in the plain, established, entirely unglamorous body of known physics, alongside the boiling point of water. We make antimatter deliberately, a few particles at a time, at colossal effort. The world makes flickers of it on its own, as we said, up in the high air, down in the deep ground, and yes, faintly, warmly, inside you. This is not a maybe, not a might be. It is on the books, in ink.
But handled, people actually make the stuff on purpose, hold on to it even, for a while.
A few particles worth at a time, held for the briefest of moments before it meets ordinary matter and is gone. But yes, made on purpose, studied closely, genuinely understood. And here is the part that ought to knock the science fiction clean out of it for good. You may very well have stood in the same building as a machine that runs on this. A kind of hospital scanner uses it. Right now, today, on an ordinary afternoon, ordinarily.
A hospital scanner, a medical machine, in a normal clinic, uses antimatter, the stuff that makes matter vanish.
Uses it as its whole working principle. Here is roughly how, and I will keep it general, because the fine details are not the point. A person is given a small, gentle, entirely harmless dose of something faintly unstable, matter that is just a touch restless, and that, as it settles down, gives off tiny mirror particles. Positrons. Antimatter, made softly, quietly, inside a living body.
Inside a living person, on purpose, and that is fine? That is safe?
On purpose and safe and done every day. Because each of those little mirror particles travels almost no distance at all before it meets an ordinary particle of the person's own body. And the two of them annihilate, wink out, into light. Two tiny darts of light flung apart back to back, straight out through the body. And the machine, ringed all the way around the patient, catches those darts of light, notes exactly where each one came from. And from many thousands upon thousands of these tiny annihilations, patiently paints a picture of the inside.
So a doctor is, quite literally, photographing tiny annihilations happening deep inside a living human being. Matter meeting its mirror, deep in someone's chest, and the flash of it drawing a map of what is in there.
Quite literally that. And it is one of the gentlest things I know. Matter meeting its mirror, deep in the warm dark of the body, unmaking itself into light. And that light, patiently gathered from every side, drawing a faithful portrait of what is going on within. Antimatter, at the clinic, on a Tuesday, helping someone get well. No vault, no doomsday, no science fiction required at any point.
That is genuinely not what I expected antimatter to be doing on a Tuesday. I expected menace. I got a diagnostic tool.
No cape, no menace, no glowing canister humming ominously in a bunker. A diagnostic tool, quietly saving lives, running on the single most complete conversion of matter into energy there is anywhere in nature. Once you know it is there, the whole thing turns out to be almost domestic, homely, utterly ordinary.
Okay, but I have to ask, because I have read the breathless version of all this, antimatter as the ultimate fuel, a thimbleful of it powering a starship across the galaxy. If it converts entirely to energy with nothing wasted, is that not true? Is that not the dream sitting right there?
The energy is real. The starship is a fairy tale, and it is worth killing gently right here, because the honest catch is brutal and people never mention it. To use the mirror stuff as fuel, you would first have to make it, and making it costs you far, far more energy than you could ever hope to get back out of it. Every single fleck we produce is bought at a staggering loss. You pour in a fortune to bottle a whisper, and then you must keep that whisper from touching one single atom of anything ever, or it is simply gone. It is not a fuel tank. It is the most expensive, most fragile substance there is, precious for what it teaches us and useless as a battery. Anyone selling you antimatter as cheap, clean power is selling you the wound-up dream, not the physics underneath it.
So the strange thing, in the end, is not that antimatter exists at all.
No. And that is the turn I've been walking you towards this whole hour. The strange thing is not that antimatter exists. We have made it, held it, put it to honest work, taken pictures of the inside of people with it. The strange thing is what its existence should have done to everything, to the entire universe. And that is the exact spot where the floor gives way beneath us.
Then take me there. You promised me this at the very start, and I have been holding you to it the whole way. Why is there anything at all? Cash it in. I am ready.
Let me build it out of pieces you already own, so you feel it click into place, rather than just take my word on faith. Piece 1. Every particle has a twin. Same mass, opposite charge. You have got that, solidly. Piece 2. When energy makes matter, it always makes it in perfectly balanced pairs. One particle and its mirror, together, in exactly equal amounts. You have got that too, and you flagged it yourself. Now hold both of those in your hands at once and wind the clock all the way back.
Back to, what, the very beginning? The young universe?
The very young universe. Unimaginably hot, a furnace with no walls anywhere, filled edge to edge with pure energy. Light and heat and motion at a ferocity you genuinely cannot picture, however hard you screw up your eyes. And now ask yourself, what does pure energy, crammed in like that, at that heat, do?
It makes matter in balanced pairs. You just drilled it into me 2 minutes ago.
It makes matter and mirror, in balanced pairs, in exactly, precisely equal amounts. Matter and antimatter, particle and anti-twin, pouring out of that furnace in perfect lockstep, one for one, because the rules give it no other choice. So the young universe fills right up with matter and antimatter, and, crucially, in dead equal measure. The same amount of each to the particle, perfectly balanced.
Okay, equal matter and antimatter everywhere, filling the hot young universe. And then it starts to cool down.
And then it starts to cool down. And now ask the question you already, in your gut, know the answer to. What do equal amounts of matter and mirror do when the furnace finally calms and they begin to find one another in the quiet?
Oh no, they annihilate.
They annihilate. Every particle finds its mirror, every single one, and each pair cancels, completely, totally, into light. Exactly the way we said, with no remainder. Equal amounts means perfect pairing, and perfect pairing means nothing survives it. No matter, no mirror. Every last particle meets its opposite and unmakes itself, and the whole contents of the universe stream away as light, spreading out, thinning, cooling, fading.
No stars.
No stars, no planets, no atoms clumping into anything at all. No chemistry, no rock, no water, no green growing thing, no you. A brilliant, universe-wide flash of light, thinning and cooling forever into an empty, silent, endless dark. And by the rules exactly as we have laid them out, every particle has a twin, energy makes them in equal pairs, pairs annihilate to nothing. That is precisely, cleanly, inescapably what should have happened. A universe that cancelled itself out before it ever really got started.
But it didn't. Obviously it didn't, because, I am here. You are here. There is a table. There is a sky full of stars. There is a whole enormous universe absolutely stuffed to the brim with matter that plainly, stubbornly, did not annihilate away into nothing.
It didn't. And here, hold very still, because this is the entire thing in a single sentence. Here is the whole mystery, complete. The books didn't quite balance.
Didn't quite balance. Meaning what, precisely? Say it slowly.
Meaning that, for some reason we do not understand, the young universe made a tiny bit more matter than mirror. Not twice as much, not half again as much. A hair, a whisper more matter than antimatter. And so, when the great annihilation came sweeping through and every particle went hunting for its twin, almost all of them found one and cancelled and left the world as light. But not quite all. For every so many pairs that met and vanished, one lonely particle of matter was left standing, with no partner, no mirror anywhere to cancel against, just left over, overlooked.
How much more, though? How big was this hair you keep waving at?
Astonishingly, almost unbelievably small, something on the order of 1 part in a billion. For every billion pairs that found each other and vanished into light, for every billion twins that cancelled clean away to nothing, about one single particle of matter was left with no partner at all. That is the whole size of the imbalance. 1 in a billion.
1 in a billion. And all the rest of it.
All the rest of it, the overwhelming, very nearly perfect rest, annihilated. Matter and mirror, in their teeming, uncountable billions, found one another and cancelled and became light.
Hang on, and that light, is that still out there? The actual light from the actual annihilation, the one that very nearly emptied the whole universe, could I, in some real sense, point at it?
You are bathed in it, this very moment, from every side. It fills all of space, in every direction you could turn. A faint, even, patient glow, left behind from when the young universe was still a furnace. The cooled relic of that first fire. Almost all of the matter and almost all of the mirror that ever existed found each other and poured away into light, back when everything was young and blazing. And that faded glow is what that fire cooled into, still carrying, written into it, the fingerprint of what your vanished twins became. And against that unthinkable ocean of leftover light, the little that survived, every star, every galaxy, all the matter in all the sky, is the merest sediment at the bottom. Roughly 1 billion parts light for every 1 part stuff. We live in the thin residue of an almost total erasure.
Wait. So everything, the stars, the planets, this table, my own 2 hands,
is made of the survivors. The crumbs that happened, by no virtue of their own, to have no partner. The 1 in a billion that missed the annihilation. Not through cleverness, not for any reason we can name, but simply because when the music stopped, there was no mirror particle left to take its hand. You are not the main event. The main event was the annihilation, the great cancelling, the flash that became the glow that still fills the sky. You are what was left standing in the corner afterwards, the rounding error, the remainder, the tiny bit the universe never got around to cancelling.
That is, I genuinely do not have a joke for that one, and I have had a joke for nearly everything tonight.
Good, it does not want one. Sit in it bare instead. Every star you have ever wished on, every person you have ever loved, every single atom of your own body, all of it, without one exception anywhere, is built from the 1 in a billion that got away. We are the leftover. The whole warm, crowded, arguing, living world is the crumb that missed its partner and was spared.
All right, but I have to ask it, even though I can already feel the shape of your answer coming. Why? Why 1 part in a billion more matter than mirror? What tipped it? What laid a thumb, however lightly, on that scale?
And here we are. The moment I promised you right at the very beginning. The honest one. The one I told you I would have to look you in the eye to say. We do not know.
You don't have even nothing? Nobody has an answer? Not even a good guess with its hand up.
There are ideas, serious, careful, hard-won ideas about what could, in principle, tip the balance a hair's breadth towards matter rather than mirror. People have poured whole lives into it, brilliant lives. But not one of those ideas is established. Not one has been confirmed to be the answer. We can see, plainly and beyond any doubt, that the imbalance happened. We are the living proof of it, every one of us, standing here made entirely of the leftover. But why it happened, what tilted the scales that single part in a billion, and no other way, is genuinely, honestly, completely open. An unsolved problem. One of the real ones, not a tidy gap waiting to be filled in next term.
And you are not just being modest here. This is not well, it's complicated, but we basically know, wearing a humble little coat to seem charming.
I am not being modest, and I want to be very clear about that, because it would be the easiest thing in the world to fudge it, and you would never once catch me. I would love, honestly, to lean in and hand you the answer with a knowing little smile. There is no answer to hand you. The plain fact is that we do not know why there is something rather than nothing, and I mean that not as a line of poetry to close a show, but as a genuine, standing piece of unfinished physics. The furnace should have cancelled itself down to nothing, and it didn't, and the reason is a real hole in the map. If anyone ever tells you this one is settled, that we know why matter won, they are telling you a story they dearly wish were true.
That is genuinely wild to me, that we can trace it this far, this precisely, one part in a billion. We can even point up at the leftover light and say, there, that is what nearly all of it became, and then just walk straight into a wall.
We can trace it astonishingly, almost indecently far. We can say the imbalance was about 1 in a billion. We can say the survivors are us entirely. We can point up at the faded glow filling the sky and say, there, that is what your annihilated twin turned into. And then, at the very last step, the one that asks the single word, why, the honest map just goes blank. Here be dragons. And we are still out there in that blank right now, this year, looking for the reason. It has not been found. It may not be found for a very long time.
And yet, I don't know how to say this, there is something almost beautiful in it. That the reason there is anything at all is a tiny imbalance nobody can explain. A leftover nobody ordered and nobody can account for.
A universe that exists only because, once, at the very start of everything, the books did not quite balance. A rounding error the size of all the stars there are. That is not a tidy, satisfying note to end a lesson on. It does not close with a click. But it is the truth, and I would far rather hand you the true open door than a comfortable, painted shut one.
All right, before you send me off to lie awake all week about being a rounding error, let me get the shape of the whole thing into my hands. Just the shape, not a full recap, I promise. I know exactly how you feel about those.
Go on then. Say it back to me in your own words, and I will tell you if it holds.
Matter has a mirror, a twin for everything, same mass, opposite charge, and light alone is its own. Bring a thing and its mirror together and they do not smash, they cancel, wholly, completely, into light, with nothing left on the floor. Run that backwards and light freezes into matter, but always, always in balanced pairs. And we, all of us, everything I have ever seen, are the 1 in a billion crumb that was left over when very nearly all of it cancelled away into the glow in the sky. A restless, doubled, very nearly cancelled world.
That holds. That is exactly the shape of it, and you found it yourself. A world that is forever being made and unmade, matter and mirror trading places with light without pause, and a whole universe of solid stuff that only exists at all because of a leftover so small you could scarcely name it, once, long ago.
And yet, here is the thing that is nagging at me now, right as we finish. It holds together. I mean, I am holding together. This table is holding together. If everything is this restless, this doubled, this ready to trade itself in for light at the first touch, why doesn't it all just come apart in my hands?
And that, right there, is the perfect question to walk out the door on. Listen to what we have actually done all hour. We have talked the entire time about what things are, and about what makes them. We have not asked even once what holds them. What keeps the 3 quarks inside a proton from simply drifting off in 3 directions? What pins an electron to its atom instead of wandering away into the dark? What holds you down firmly in that chair and holds a whole galaxy together against the pull of the empty night? We have not so much as touched it.
The forces. You are talking about forces.
The forces. Next time, the 4 forces of nature. The complete set of them. Every last way that anything, anywhere, ever pushes or pulls or binds anything else to anything else. The entire toolbox the universe owns for holding itself together. And it turns out to be a startlingly short list.
Only 4? Everything, every shove, every stick, every pull in the entire universe comes down to just 4?
Only 4. That is the whole toolkit, start to finish. And here is the absurd little thing to chew on all week until then. The one force you know best of all, the one you feel in your own body every single second you are alive. The one holding you down in that chair this very moment.
Gravity.
Gravity. By a laughable, almost insulting margin, it is the very weakest of the 4. The runt of the whole litter. So feeble the others would scarcely notice it had walked into the room.
The weakest? The thing that holds entire galaxies together, that keeps the planets swinging round the sun, that I cannot for the life of me jump free of. That one is the weakest of the 4.
The weakest, and it is not remotely close. How the force that shapes the heavens turns out to be the puniest thing in all of physics. The runt that somehow quietly runs the whole cosmos. That is exactly where we go next.
The strongest thing I feel is secretly the runt, right? So I will be sitting here all week with a 1 in a billion crumb that turns out to be me. A mirror twin I am now hoping very much never to shake hands with, and a weakling that somehow holds the stars in the sky. Next time, the 4 forces.